Not bad. We can add new product to the cart. Let's handle the case if the item is already in the cart. And we're going to do that by mapping over the cart, checking the IDs. If the ID matches, then of course we'll set up a bit more functionality. And I'm going to start by creating a new array. So temp cart. And this is the case where we'll iterate over our current cart in the state. Now, as far as the return, I'll right away set up my return where I'm going to say that I'm going to return all the state values, of course, dot state, and then cart will be equal to my temp cart. So the array that I'm about to set up. And in here, we're going to go with state cart map. So we're mapping over the cart, and then each item I'm going to represent as a cart item. And then as far as the return, well, as I'm mapping over, I have two cases. I have a case where, of course, the ID is going to match to whatever I'm grabbing here. So whatever is coming from the single product, just keep in mind, though, that we need to check for both of them. We need to check for the ID plus color because that is the cart item ID. I'm using the ID in a product, but in the cart, the ID is actually ID plus color. And if that is the case, then of course, I'll have to change the amount, correct? Because keep in mind, if I take a look at the complete application, and if I remove this sucker, that Utopia sofa, and in the products, let me find it. Of course, probably I won't be able to do it, meaning it's just going to take me a while to find that Utopia sofa. That's how it usually works when you want to showcase something. And there it is. Now I have Utopia sofa. I'll use the same color. So it works exactly the same. And I'm going to add one item over here. So now, of course, I have this item. And then I would want to go back to continue shopping. And again, I'll look for the same item, same color. And now I would want to add two more items. So this is the functionality that we're about to set up, where if the item is already in a cart, I just want to increase that amount. That's all I have to do. If the item is not in the cart, then of course we're adding a new item, which by the way, we already did in the previous video. Now the gotcha is that the same cart item can have different colors. That's why the ID is actually equal to the ID plus the color. So in here, I'm going to say if the ID matches, then there's going to be one functionality. If the ID doesn't match, well, then I simply want to return that cart item. I don't want to do anything. I simply say return cart item as it is. Since I only want to update amount if the cart item is already there, correct? If it's not in the cart, well, it doesn't really matter. Now, the gotcha here is that, of course, I'm checking first for the temp item, if it is, and then I'm double checking one more time since I'm increasing the amount. So I'm checking if the item is in the cart, beautiful. And then if it is in the cart, then of course I'll update this amount value. So I'll say if the item ID matches, and we say that by cart item dot ID is equal to ID plus color, then I'm going to create a new amount property. I'll say let new, and we're going with amount, and that one is equal to cart item, whatever is the current amount, plus the amount that I'm passing in. All right. But the gotcha is that we always need to check with our stock, correct? And where we were setting up the stock, it was in the max property. So right after I set up my new amount, I actually want to check if the value is bigger than the max, then the amount will be equal to the max. So say another if statement, if new amount is bigger than cart item max, so the property that is equal to the stock, then the new amount will be equal to a cart item max. So essentially we're saying, yeah, you might add 5 items the first time, 5 items the second time, but if my stock max is just 6, then there's going to be 6 items in the cart. And then this is going to be the case where I would want to return all the properties of the cart item. So in both cases, I'm returning the cart item. However, in this case, of course, I'm overriding those values. I say that amount is equal to a new amount, like so. And now, of course, we can save. And let's just go over the functionality one more time. So these are the things that we're passing in from add to cart: ID, color, amount, and product. If the item is not in a cart, we create a new one with these properties. Again, please keep in mind that ID plus color is equal to the cart item ID. Now, if the item is already in the cart, then of course we iterate over the cart, check where the item is. So we find where is the item. And if the ID is equal to ID plus color, then of course we know that that is the current item. And then we just need to increase the amount. Now, if of course the cart item ID doesn't match, then we don't want to do anything with that item. We just return to our array. And then if the amount is bigger than the max, then the stock, then of course we just set the new amount equal to the max. And now the amount property is equal to that new amount. And we return all the properties of the item. We just change the amount. And at the end, we just set cart equal to that temp cart. So now we can test it out one more time. So I'm going to go here again. I'll pick the same product so we can just double check. Let me check. Of course, I would want products and I would want to have the cart provider. So I'll have to make this sucker a little bit bigger. Cart at the moment is an empty array, correct? So there's nothing in there. And I'm going to go with this bookshelf. I'll pick the yellow color. I'll add the amount of 2. There it is. Now we add it to the cart. We navigated to the cart page. We're not handling that over here. And remember previously when I added the same product, of course, there was an error. In this case, you'll see that once our functionality is in place, I go with 2 and I add, and now, of course, only the amount value changed. Everything else stayed the same. Awesome. Now I think we can go to the cart page and handle what we are displaying.